I am in Carrollton, Kentucky at General Butler State Resort Park. This is a unique state park with connections to General William Butler of the Mexican-American War. The first stop by the entrance is this really great Veterans Memorial. Here's a 9/11 memorial plaque showing the 3 locations that were involved in that most horrible day. Across from it is a Pearl Harbor Memorial. It says, "Keep America alert. Be prepared." Here's the main section of the memorial. It honors all Kentucky veterans. There are tributes to the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, the Coast Guard, and the National Guard. This is a really nice memorial at the park entrance. Now let's go check out the rest of the park. This is the Butler-Turpin House State Historic Site. This home was built in 1859, but the Butler family came to Kentucky way back in the 1780s, and Percival Butler settled on the land that is now this park in 1797. His eldest sons, Thomas and William Orlando Butler, both went into the military by the time of the War of 1812. William was barely spared from the River Raisin, where hundreds of Americans were killed, lots of Kentuckians. That was a horrible battle. Then he joined General Andrew Jackson as his aide-de-camp for the Battle of New Orleans. William Orlando Butler was a general by the time of the Mexican-American War. He was second in command under General Zachary Taylor during the successful Battle of Monterey. He was also the commander of the American forces occupying Mexico City for a time. General Butler became well known for his heroics during the Battle of Monterey, and was the Democratic vice presidential nominee with Lewis Cass in the 1848 election, running against Zachary Taylor. They didn't win. Now, General William Butler never lived in this house. This was the home of Philip Turpin, who married into the Butler family. I did catch a tour of this home, and I was informed once inside that they no longer allow photography, which is a real bummer. I was here many years ago and it was no problem at all, but now they have chosen to make this a problem with a nonsense rule, which is a real shame. Behind the home is the Butler Family Cemetery. There's a historical marker for Colonel Percival Pierce Butler, who participated in the Revolution. He was at Valley Forge and Yorktown, eventually emigrating west, and he was Kentucky's first adjutant general. This is the grave of General William Orlando Butler, who passed away here in Carrollton in 1880 at the age of 89. He played a big part in some very significant battles during the early years of this nation. Butler did live through the Civil War. Though he didn't participate in a military role, he did stay loyal to the Union, even though the Butlers were slaveholders. These are some very old gravestones of the Butler family. Some are not in the best of shape. Now I'll have to find some other sites in the park. This is a scenic overlook at one of the highest points in the park, atop a bluff overlooking the Ohio River Valley and the town of Carrollton. The trees could definitely use some trimming, but that's still a nice view. The top of the massive smokestack in Madison, Indiana is visible. This overlook has some really interesting stonework. It was constructed by the Civilian Conservation Corps during the 1930s. The New Deal program employed out-of-work young men to build infrastructure at various parks across the country, and the Butler Memorial State Park was selected as one of them. A camp for the men was built nearby, and one of their tasks was to construct this very large stone overlook, where they apparently just kept taking stones and piling them on top of each other. This is the General Butler Lodge. This is a very cool lodge that was built in 1961, and it has some very unique architecture. It definitely takes some inspiration from the rustic and even the Usonian styles. The lobby with its woodwork and big windows is great. This center window goes all the way down to the bottom level. There are some nice views of nearby hills from the lodge. There's the lodge's pool. And inside his namesake lodge, there is a little tribute to General Butler. There's a bust of him, and the real version of this portrait is inside the Butler-Turpin House. Again, he was a very accomplished individual, and even wrote poetry. At the bottom of the center window, there's a little fountain. Also, there is a restaurant down here. And this is what the lodge looks like from outside. This seems to be a top-notch state park lodge. This is neat. A sign that was made by the Civilian Conservation Corps company that built this park. These young men were paid $30 a month. Most of that had to go back to their families, but it was something for some steady work during the Great Depression. Company 592 also built this lake and a dam. Now I'm going to take a look around the town of Carrollton. This was the home of General William Orlando Butler. It's a private residence now. It was built in 1819, and the general lived here throughout most of his life. This is the Carroll County Courthouse. It was built in 1884, so it's a fairly old one, and there's some points of interest on the grounds. This is the Carroll County World War I and World War II Memorial. This plaque memorializes those who served in Korea and Vietnam. Right next to the courthouse is the old stone jailhouse. It was built in 1880 and stayed in operation for nearly 90 years until it was finally decommissioned in 1969. Unfortunately, they don't leave it wide open like the similar old jail in nearby Vevey, Indiana. There is a stretch of quaint historic structures surrounding the courthouse. Though this one appears to have been demolished recently. It's just a big pile of rubble now. Here's the mighty Ohio River. The mouth of the Kentucky River is at Carrollton. There's a historic toll bridge that crosses over it. I did by chance happen upon a Civil War reenactment happening on the banks of the Ohio River, and I have a separate video on that. On the outskirts of town is the Masterson House, the oldest home in Carrollton, and perhaps the oldest home still standing along the river west of the Allegheny Mountains. This home was built in the early 1790s. Carrollton was originally known as Port William, incorporated in 1794, and this home was a center of activities for the small community. Richard and Sarah Masterson were Methodists, so Methodist church services were held in this home until a church was finally built in 1810. Also, the first local court session was held in this home in 1799. This home is occasionally open for special events, but the interior is restored. That's the view of the Ohio River from the home. This is the Andrew Jackson Magnolia. The plaque says from the Hermitage to the White House. I wonder if this tree was transplanted or has some connection to the Hermitage or the White House. Right by the house is the Masterson family cemetery. Clearly back in the day, local families would just have their own cemeteries near their homes, so they are all buried here. And here's a time capsule to be opened in 2038. Now heading east on the Ohio River Road. There are lots of steel mills on the Kentucky side. They definitely mar the landscape of the Ohio River Valley from the Indiana side. This is the small town of Ghent, Kentucky. Ghent is directly across the river from Vevey, Indiana. That's a very historic town that I have several videos on. Here at the Markland Lock and Dam, there's an observation tower, so I'm gonna head up. This dam was built in 1964. It spans nearly 1,400 feet across the Ohio River from Kentucky to Indiana. And there's a pretty cool view from up here. Unfortunately, there are no barges going through the lock system right now, and I don't feel like waiting for hours for one to slowly make their way here, so maybe another time. I hope you enjoyed this tour of General Butler State Resort Park in Carrollton, Kentucky. I have videos on many other state parks, national parks, historic sites, roadside attractions, and more across the country. And if you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.